My brothers and sisters, the Lord is with you.
And also with you.
We continue listening to God speak to us from the Gospel in the tradition of Matthew.
Glory to you, Lord.
At that time, Jesus was led by the Spirit into the desert to be tempted by the devil. He fasted for 40 days and 40 nights, and afterwards he was hungry. The tempter came and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, command these stones to become loaves of bread." Jesus replied, "It is written, one does not live on bread alone, but by every word that comes forth from the mouth of God." Then the devil took him to the holy city and made him stand on the parapet of the temple and said to him, "If you are God's son, throw yourself down, for it is written, he will command the angels concerning you, and with their hands they will support you, lest you dash your foot against a stone." Jesus answered, "Again it is written, you shall not put the Lord your God to the test." Then the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their magnificence. He said to Jesus, "All these shall I give you, if you will prostrate yourself before me and worship me." At this Jesus said to him, "Get away, Satan. It is written, the Lord your God shall you worship, and him alone shall you serve." And the devil left him, and behold, the angels came and ministered to him. This is the gospel, the good news of our salvation.
Praise to you, Lord.
By the words of the gospel, may our sins be blotted out.
Amen.
Good afternoon.
Good.
I have to tell you a little story in my past, if you will. Every time I hear this particular, or read this particular passage of Matthew's Gospel, and it says the devil took him up on the parapet of the temple. When I was teaching Scripture, we were talking about that, and I said to the kids, "What's a parapet?" Father, I said, "It's a hole where a parrot lives in the ground." "Oh, okay." And then I said, "No." I said, "It's the top of a building. It's a part of the, like a wall that goes around the top of a building." I explained what it was. "Okay. Well, at the test, I put down what is a parapet. The kid said it's a hole in the ground. Parrot lives." So I said, "No, baby," I said, that's not that. It's not that." I said, "But I can't knock you up because so I gave him credit for it anyway." But every time I hear that word parapet, I can't help but think of that poor kid in class. Today we hear about what we call the desert experience. Jesus, as it says here, is led by the Spirit into the desert, and there he spends the 40 days. And this is where we get the whole 40 days of Lent from. And we read how he is tempted by the devil. He is confronting himself in this hostile environment. And this desert experience is nothing new. If we read through Scripture, the prophet Elijah lived in a cave on top of Mount Carmel. And there he was fed by a raven that every day brought bread to him. We see other prophets living in the desert away from the activity and the lure and the temptation of their society so that they can give themselves over to the Lord and to the Spirit. This experience we see here in the early church, among the early church fathers, Antony of the Desert. One of the earliest people that we know who went into the desert and lived as a hermit out in the desert. Unfortunately, what happens is that people get to know that these people are there, and they go seeking counsel and whatever from them, and so sometimes they can't be alone. Later on in our history, we see Benedict starting the same thing. He leaves his town of Nursia in Italy, and he goes into the hills around Subiaco, and there he establishes himself. And again, we see the raven bringing him bread. And so the stories go on and on and on of individuals who leave their society with the purpose of giving themselves over totally to God and being imbued with the Spirit. And so today we have this story of Jesus, and here again we talk about the desert experience. When we're talking about Lent, we're talking about an opportunity for us to remove ourselves from our everyday work of life. And unfortunately, we can't do that. We have responsibilities, we have jobs, we have people who are depending on us, we have families. And it's difficult for us to pull away for 40 days or 5 days and experience that solitude, that quietness, that lack of interference of the world around us to give ourselves over to the Lord. During Lent, we are asked to do things that we ordinarily don't do. We ask that we live a life of penance, and penance in the sense of conversion and not mortification, beating ourselves down. We are asked to be more open to the needs of our brothers and sisters. We're asked to spend more time in prayer. We're asked to do things that we ordinarily don't need necessarily to do. But it is difficult for us to have this experience of the desert when we are confronted by everyday life. And so what do? We try to do what we can to make it possible for us to have that desert experience in our everyday life. And we do that by opening ourselves up to the possibility of spending some time alone with God. Now that could be any place we want it to be. We could have that as we are driving along, going to work. We can have that when we come home from work, to spend a few moments in our room giving thanks to God for what has happened this day. There are ways in which we can accomplish in somehow this desert experience within our own life. And the purpose of this desert experience is to come closer to God. The desert experience was such one that we enter into a desolate place with no supports, with nothing around us that comforts us. We are in that desert experience and, as it were, naked before our God. We are naked before our God. We don't have, it doesn't matter how much money we have. It doesn't matter how big a house we live in. It doesn't matter what kind of car we drive. It doesn't matter about anything, because it doesn't make any sense in the desert when you are stripped naked and stand before your God. All those support systems, all those things that we consider important are now gone. And we stand there before our God. And it is in this state that God is able to speak to us. That God is able to deal with us. That God is able to unveil His self to us, because there is no other distraction around. And so we are able to open our hearts and to listen to this God of ours. If we read the book of Hosea, he says in the book, God mourns the fact that the people have moved far away from Him. There's that sense of sinfulness in Israel. And then, almost as a second thought, God says, I know what I will do. I will call her into the desert, and there I will speak tenderly to her heart. Call her into into the desert. Call her away from all the temptations. Call her away from the foreign gods. Call away from the mercantile giving and buying and selling of everyday life. And I will speak tenderly to her heart. I will remove her heart of stone and replace it with a heart of flesh. And so we will be one again. Lent is an interesting time, and as I spoke on Ash Wednesday, hopefully our attitude of Lent has changed. Because so often we look at this time to say, I am a sinner. How can anybody love me? How can God love me? Because I am such a sinner. Look what my sins have done. It's crucified the Lord. I have slain the unspotted Lamb of God. I have nailed him to the cross because of my sinfulness. Well, if we want to honor ourselves by being that kind of a sinner, go ahead. But I'll tell you right now, it does nothing for your salvation. But only makes you unhappy. And also makes you fearful of God who loves you. But rather, that maybe we use this opportunity of Lent, as I said before, to become adults. To recognize that we do have faults and failures. To recognize that there are things in our lives that we do because we are weak human beings. But that in being an adult, we recognize that we also have to say, I'm sorry. And in doing so, what I am saying is, I will try to do better. I will try to be a better person. I will try to give more of myself to the things that are more important than the material objects that I worship sometimes, who become true foreign gods to us. And so as we journey these 40 days, which will be over very quickly, let us ask the Lord to give us that experience of the desert, to help us to unclutter our lives, to begin looking at things which are more important, to put our order in right, to set ourselves out with a plan, so that when we do come to the great feast of Easter, we will be able to truly be raised with Christ to a new life. And may God give us peace as we journey this Lent.